Chapter 4 In the Shadow of Dark Gate. The night passed heavily, and it was nearly time for Eladir's turn at guard when Taran heard a rustling in the shrub. He raised his head abruptly. The sound stopped. He was unsure now that he had really heard it. He held his breath and waited, poised and tense. Adayan, whose ears were as keen as his eyes, had also noticed it and was at Taran's side in an instant. There was, it seemed to Taran, a flicker of light. A branch cracked nearby. With a shout, Taran swung up his blade and leaped toward it. A golden beam flashed in his eyes, and a squeal of indignation struck his ears. "Put down that sword!" Islandly cried. "Every time I see you, you're waving it around or pointing it at somebody." Taran fell back dumbfounded. As he did, a dark figure bounded past Eladir, who sprang to his feet, his blade unsheathed and whistling through the air. "Help! Help!" howled Gurgi. "Angry Lord will harm Gurgi's poor tender head with slashings and gashings." He scuttled halfway up a pine tree, and from the safety of the perch, shook a fist at the astonished Eladir. Taran pulled Islandry into the protection of the grove. Her hair was disheveled, her robe torn and mud-stained. "What have you done?" he cried. "Do you want us all killed? Put out that light!" He seized the glowing sphere and fumbled vainly with it. "Oh, you'll never learn how to use my bauble," Islandry said with impatience. She took back the golden ball, cupped it in her hand, and the light vanished. Adayan, recognizing the girl, put his hand anxiously on her shoulder. Princess, you should not have followed us." "Of course she shouldn't," Taran put in angrily. "She must return immediately. She's a foolish, scatterbrained—" "She is uncalled and unwanted here," said Eladir, striding up. He turned to Adayan. "For once, the pig boy shows sense. Send the little fool back to her pots." Taran spun around. "Hold your tongue! I have swallowed your insults to me for the sake of our quest, but you will not speak ill of another." Eladir's sword leaped up. Taran raised his own. Adayan stepped between them and held out his hands. Enough, he ordered. "Are you so eager to shed blood?" "Must I hear reproof from pig boy?" retorted Eladir. "Must I let a scullery maid cost me my head?" "Scullery maid!" shrieked Islandwy. "Well, I can tell you—" Gurgi, meantime, had clambered cautiously from the tree and had loped over to stand behind Taran. "And this!" Eladir laughed bitterly, gesturing at Gurgi. "This thing! Is this the black beast that so alarmed you, dreamer?" "No, Eladir, it is not," murmured Adayan almost sadly. "This is Gurgi the warrior!" Gurgi boldly cried over Taran's shoulder. Yes! Clever, valiant Gurgi, who joins Master to keep him from harmful hurtings." "Be silent," Taran ordered. "You've caused trouble enough." "How did you reach us?" Adayan asked. "You are on foot." "Well, not really," Islandwy said. "At least not all the way. The horses didn't run off until a little while ago." "What?" called Taran. "You took horses from Caer Dallben and lost them?" "You know perfectly well they're our own horses," declared Islandwy. "The ones Gwydion gave us last year. And we didn't lose them. It was more that they lost us. We only stopped to let them drink, and the silly things galloped away. Frightened, I suppose. I think they didn't like being so close to Anuvin, though I'll tell you truthfully, it doesn't bother me in the least." "In any case," she concluded, "you needn't worry about them. The last we saw, they were heading straight for Caer Dallben." "And so shall you be," Taran said. "And so shall I not," cried Islandwy. "I thought about it a long time after you left, every bit as long as it took you to cross the fields, and I decided it doesn't matter what anybody says, fair is fair. If you can be allowed on a quest, so can I, and there it is, simple as that." "And it was clever Gurgi who found the way," Gurgi put in proudly. Yes, with whiffings and sniffings. Gurgi does not let gentle princess go alone, oh no, and loyal Gurgi does not leave friends behind," he added reproachfully to Taran. "Since you have come this far," Adayan said, "you may await Gwydion, although how he will deal with you two runaways may not be to your liking. Your journey," he added, smiling at the bedraggled princess, "seems to have been more difficult than ours. Rest now and take refreshment." Yes, Gurgi cried. "Crunchings and munchings for brave, hungry Gurgi." That's very kind and thoughtful of you, said Islandly with an admiring glance at Adayan. Much more than you can expect from certain assistant pig keepers. Adayan went back to the stock of provisions, while Ellidyr strode off to his guard post. Terran sat down wearily on a boulder, his sword across his knees. It's not that we're starving, Islandly said. Gurgi did remember to bring along the wallet of food. Yes, and that was a gift from Gwydion too, so he had every right to take it. It's certainly a magical wallet, she went on. It never seems to get empty. The food is really quite nourishing, I'm sure, and wonderful to have when you need it. But the truth of the matter is, it's rather tasteless. That's often the trouble with magical things. They're never quite what you'd expect. You're angry, aren't you? Gwydion went on. Islandly went on. I can always tell. You look as if you swallowed a wasp. If you'd stop to think of the danger, Terran replied, instead of just rushing off without knowing what you're doing. You're a fine one to talk, Terran Caer-Dalbyn, said Islandly. Besides, I don't think you're as angry as all that, not after what you said to Ellidyr. It was wonderful the way you were ready to smite him because of me. Not that you needed to. I could have taken good care of him myself. And I didn't mean you weren't just kind and thoughtful. You really are. It just doesn't always occur to you. For an assistant pig keeper, you do amazingly well. Before Islandly could finish, Ellidyr gave a shout of warning. A horse and rider plunged into the grove. It was Fluter. Behind him galloped Dolly's shaggy pony. Breathless, and with his yellow hair pointing in all directions, the bard flung himself from the steed and ran to Adayan. Make ready to leave, he cried. Take the weapons, get the pack horses moving. We're going to Caer-Cauldron. He caught sight of Islandly. Quick, Bellin, what are you doing here? I'm tired of being asked that, Islandly said. The cauldron, cried Terran. Did you seize it? Where are the others? Where's Dolly? Here, where else? Snapped a voice. In another instant, Dolly flickered into sight astride what had seemed to be an empty saddle. He jumped heavily to the ground. Didn't even take the time to make myself visible again. He clapped his hands to his head. Oh, my ears. Gwydion's orders are to fall back. Gwydion's orders are to fall back immediately. The bard went on in great excitement. He and Cole are with Morgant. They'll catch up if they can. If not, we are all rally at Caer-Cauldron. While Ellidyr and Adayan hurriedly untethered the animals, Terran and the bard packed the store of weapons. Keep these, Fluter ordered, pressing a bow and quiver of arrows into Islandly's hands. And the rest of you arm yourselves well. What happened? Terran asked fearfully. Did the plan fail? The plan? Fluter asked. That was perfect. Couldn't have been better. Morgant and his men rode with us to the Dark Gate. Ah, that Morgant. What a warrior, not a nerve in him. Cool as you please. You might have thought he was going on a feast. The bard shook his spiky head. And there we were, on the very threshold of Anuvin. Oh, you'll hear songs about that, mark my words. Stop yammering, ordered Dolly, hastening up with the agitated pack horses. Yes, the plan was fine, he cried angrily. It would have gone slick as butter. There was only one thing wrong. We wasted our time and risked our necks for nothing. Will one or the other of you make sense? Islandly burst out. I don't care about songs or butter. Tell us straight out, where is the cauldron? I don't know, said the bard. Nobody knows. You didn't lose it, Islandly gasped, clapping a hand to her mouth. No, you pack of ninnies, great heroes. I knew I should have gone with you from the beginning. Dolly looked as if he were about to explode. His ears trembled. He raised himself on tiptoe, his fists clenched. Don't you understand? The cauldron is gone. Away, not there. That's not possible, Terran cried. Don't tell me it isn't possible, Dolly snapped. I was there. I know what I saw. I know what I heard. I went in first, just as Gwydion ordered. I found the Hall of Warriors. No trouble at all. No guards, in fact. Ha! I think this will be easier than whistling. I slipped in. I could have done it in full view in broad daylight. Why? Because there's nothing to guard. The platform was empty. Iran has moved the cauldron, Terran interrupted. There's a new hiding place. He locked it up somewhere else. Don't you think I have the wits I was born with? Dolly retorted. That was the first thing that came to my head, so I set off again. I've searched Aaron's own chamber if I'd had to, but I hadn't gone 6 paces before I ran into a pair of Aaron's guards. Or they ran into me, the clumsy oafs, Dolly muttered, rubbing a bruised eye. I went along with them a little way. By then I'd heard enough. It must have happened a few days ago. How or who, I don't know. Neither does Aaron. You can imagine his rage. But whoever they were, they got there ahead of us. They did their work well. The cauldron is gone from Anuvin. But that's wonderful, said Islandwe. Our task is done, and it costs us nothing more than a journey. Our task is far from done, said the grave voice of Adayan. He had finished loading one of the pack horses and had come to stand behind Terran. Ellidyr, too, had been listening closely. We've lost the glory of fighting for it, Terran said. But the important thing is that Aeron has it no longer. It is not so easy, Adayan warned. This is a stinging defeat for Aeron. He will do all in his power to regain the cauldron. But there is more. The cauldron is dangerous in itself, even out of Aeron's grasp. What if it has fallen into other evil hands? Exactly what Gwydion himself said, Fluter put in. The thing has somehow got to be found and destroyed without delay. Gwydion will plan a new search from Caer Cadar. It will seem our work has just begun. Mount your steeds, Adayan ordered. We cannot overburden our pack animals. The Princess Islandme and Gurgi will share our own horses. Islamak will bear only me, Ellidyr said. She has been trained so, from a foal. I would expect that, being a steed of yours, Terran said. Islandwe will ride with me. And I shall take Gurgi with me on Luagor, Adayan said. Come now, quickly. Terran ran to Melonlas, leaped astride, and pulled Islandwe up after him. Dolly and the others hastened to mount, but as they did, savage cries burst from the other side of them, and there was a sudden hiss of arrows.